So.
You want to see traffic in and out. That's the first thing. If you don't have that, you may have lost the hive. But presuming we have pretty good traffic, then you lift the lid. In the upper region, you're typically going to find honey. That's where they store the honey. So if things are going well, if you've got a good strong hive, they're going to start storing the excess up there.
This was empty from a few weeks ago. Okay, now can you look in here and see they've started filling it back up. They've capped a few of the cells off, but you got a lot of nectar going in.
Now, as far as you get down into the hive, there you want to see some brood. That's always a good sign. Look for the babies, the larvae, that white worm that's in the cell. That's what I always look for. These are all capped off. They're ready to hatch. They're done. But if you look down in, you see the smaller babies right in this area.
Yeah.
That's always a good sign when you see babies. That means you got new workers on the way. You'd like to find the queen if you could, but if you see the babies, you know she's at work. She's been laying eggs, and that's all that really matters. You want to look for some honey, the nectar being converted. You want to find some pollen here and there. Royal jelly, I think that's what we were seeing early on, the kind of glossy looking stuff. They have a measure of that in as well. But then you want to find the brood. Some capped brood normally is always in there unless you're to the very end of the season and maybe they're going to be just in the storage mode. They have to make it through the winter with the old bees essentially, and they live longer in the winter. But then once you get into this springtime, that's when they need to start having replacement bees come in, and she'll lay all through the summer, then start tapering off in the fall. And at that point, you're just going to have the honey and the pollen as the stores. You won't have brood. Now, as we got into that hive, we were looking at some of it had that nectar was just coming out a little bit, and what they're doing is keeping stores around the babies. You know, they're feeding the nectar, well, the honey. They're feeding that honey, they're feeding the pollen to the larvae. It starts out as a little bitty egg, and it's almost like nearly microscopic. You can see an egg, but you have to get in the bright sunlight, you have to really look. But then it grows rapidly, and then you start seeing that little larva that lays down in it. As it gets bigger, it's going to be long ways, and that's when they cap it off. The drone is bigger, both the bee and the cell. The worker bee tends to be the smaller one. The queen cell is altogether different. It hangs down normally and is going to be like the size of a peanut. It's much bigger. She gets fed royal jelly, and she's a special cell. One thing you have to be careful of, you don't want to get into them too much because you do stress the bees. What we did was part of it. You know, we even cut some bees in half. You saw that pulling it out. You know, you don't really want to do that. When you put the lid back on, you're going to crush some. We've stirred the pot. Broke some cells open. Well, that was work that they had done that now they're going to have to redo. I really like to get bees that can take care of themselves. You have other pests like the tracheomites. There are a host of viruses that can attack. Those tend to show up in the brood, or you start seeing maybe larvae kicked out at the bottom. The bees may pull it out because it's died. There are things like sac brood. There's one called foul brood. There's a European foul brood, an American foul brood. That's kind of like the bubonic plague when you get the foul brood. I've never seen it, never had it, hope never to. But those are some really bad diseases that you can encounter. And you might encounter it and not know it. You know, the hive die, and don't know why. You know, I keep a better eye on that, but I tend to try to build up a strong hive that can stand on its own. I don't like to do the pesticide thing. You know, some people put these terramycin strips in, that sort of thing. I just tend to lose the hive and decide that that wasn't a strain that I wanted. The beekeeper's nightmare would be to kill his queen. You know, you wouldn't want to do that. Another thing you would never want to do is to open the hive when it's cold. I've been told if it's below 50 degrees, you don't want to open that hive, because if there's brood in there and you pull it out, it's liable to be chilled, and you've got a bunch of dead babies. So all that they invested in that generation is now gone. So those are things you would look out for. Other than that, you would just want to be careful. You notice when I got into it, I was kind of slow and measured. You find out real quick that you don't want to make quick motions around bees. Even if you're just on top of it, not pulling out of frame, if you move quickly, they'll attack your hand. So you kind of learn about what they react to and what they don't. That you can move in, slowly tear it apart. They didn't get too rambunctious, not too aggravated or agitated. Now you notice when I dropped that one frame, they did. You don't want to do that. You just see that you're shaking them up. They're going into full-scale alarm mode, that sort of thing.